Okay, so today our monthly exchange webinar is on rural tech ecosystems. And I know with my accent that you're all hearing tech, maybe, or some other version. But I'm saying technology, rural tech ecosystems. This is one of the words that I do not like to say after many times of teaching and students saying, I have no idea what you're saying, Dr. Kendall. We have a great panel here who I'm very excited to present to you. So first of all, I know Jackie's in the background doing the controls. Jackie, if we can spotlight Wendy. Wendy is first on my list here. And Wendy is the founder of Elevate Talent. She is a social entrepreneur and technologist passionate. Technologist passionate. Am I saying that right? About creating work environments so that everyone can thrive. So Wendy's a big deal, you guys. She's worked with people all around the world, top innovation leaders. She's been right at the forefront of building some technology companies, some very successful ones. And now she works with companies on hiring talent strategy, hiring, employee engagement, and retention. Wendy lives in Marceline, home of Walt Disney. And so, of course, this is her jam, right? She's passionate about rural entrepreneurship, and she's running a technology company from rural Missouri. So, yeah. William SaintAmour is the CEO, Executive Director of Cobalt Community Research, and he is actually coming to us from Michigan today. So the CEC conference draws people from all over the country, from other states, not just Missouri. William his company provides survey, market, and geofencing data to communities across the United States. And if you don't know what geofencing is, you will learn today, and it's super cool. He has more than 30 years in research and communication fields, has a master's degree from MSU in communications, and he also serves on the Charlotte Main Street Board and Economic Vitality Committee. So William is also, in his heart of hearts, all about economic development as well. He's also a beekeeper and mead maker. So, for me, I'm nerdy, and he just became really cool now that I learned that. But I'm quite nerdy, so I don't know what that says, really. But you're a beekeeper and mead maker. Oh, my goodness. Okay, Robert Graham is our next panelist. Now, Robert is a CISA, Region 7 cybersecurity advisor. And Robert, when he begins, he will tell you more about what that means. But he provides risk mitigation advice, conducts outreach assessments and inspections, coordinates training and support. Basically, it's offering cybersecurity assistance to critical infrastructure owners and operators, state, local, tribal, territorial governments. And so his role is helping people be ready, preparing people to be ready for, cyber preparedness, assessments, protective resources, support, leadership. And so very, very important, especially as, we're rolling out broadband across into more areas, rural areas, and we have a lot of businesses who are becoming global, local businesses that are becoming global. So Robert's services are really valuable. And then Emily Hemingway. So I just referred to Emily earlier as a networking queen because I remember when I first met Emily and she told me, I don't know, I can't even remember what the number was, but it made me want to cry of the number of interviews and meetings and different things that she did when she first came to St. Louis to get involved in the ecosystem. So we're talking about technology ecosystems. Emily is actually out there building them. So Emily currently serves, she is the founding executive director of Tech STL, which is the first tech council of Greater St. Louis. She has over 15 years experience in fostering equitable economic opportunity. She transforms communities through entrepreneurship and innovation, brings people together through data-driven strategic planning, public-private partnerships, and leading-edge community advancement practices. She's also an economic development powerhouse, an award-winning event producer, business accelerator director, public relations specialist, and nationally recognized thought leader in entrepreneurial ecosystem design. And I feel like maybe she drinks a lot of coffee and doesn't sleep, or else she's a superhero. So that is our panel for today. So a lot of knowledge and expertise and insight and experience on our panel. So I'm going to just throw out the first question just to get us started in the conversation. The first question then, we are connecting entrepreneurial communities. Our focus is on rural. So how can rural communities leverage technology to foster economic and entrepreneurial growth? And I guess that question begins with maybe how are they doing it already? And then what are the opportunities that maybe they're not taking hold of yet? And we're seeing, that there are opportunities that communities could be picking up. Wendy, you want to start us off?
Yeah, happy to. So, Annette, I'm a firm believer that innovation doesn't have a geography. I think that people can build smart, amazing things from anywhere. I'm doing this from a town of about 1,200 people and work all around the country. I think that that's happening more and more. With remote work, the ability to network, to sell to new clients, to manage your clients from absolutely anywhere. Founders are choosing to build businesses where they want to live. And so whether that's moving back to family homes, whether that's just moving to somewhere beautiful that they want to live, from a quality of life standpoint, we're seeing that a lot more. COVID helped kind of accelerate that push from a remote work perspective. And so teams are operating either fully remotely or from, rural areas. You can find great talent, and you can build pretty lean as well. So that's where I'm seeing people do some really great stuff, is just a really lean team. You don't need a lot. You leverage tech to help optimize everything. I'm a big fan of rural broadband. I'm doing this off of fiber. I get better internet out here than I did in the city, so we're seeing that happen more and more. And I love it because I think it gives options and it's helping revitalize a lot of these communities that were smaller and don't have major employer footprints yet. So.
My experience is the same as Wendy, even up here in Michigan. So the ability to log in using StarNet or whatever, to have some halfway decent internet so that you can then access some of the amazing tools that have really just come into place in the last 5-10 years. There's a lot of great programs for small organizations that they can tap into. Google has a suite of stuff. Microsoft has a suite of stuff. As a nonprofit, we're able to access a lot through TechSoup, and really have enterprise level data and tools available for a very reasonable price. So there's just some amazing things you can do. And as a small community, you can get out and you can live the kind of things that you're talking about. When we're developing programs, we actually, go down the street and say, hey, Brian, let's go have a beer. I want to show you some data and get your thoughts. Those kind of conversations are a lot harder to have in New York or Seattle.
So I guess I'll go next. I'm with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We're a federal agency underneath the Department of Homeland Security. We don't really focus on the ecosystem growth per se. We're looking at it from a perspective of how do we protect the critical infrastructure, right? When you look at pretty much any organization, they all kind of align to one of the 16 critical infrastructures. If you're state, local, private, it doesn't matter. And when we talk about rural communities, they're typically the ones that I kind of concerned about. So if we're having conversation of what keeps you up at night, it's those rural communities because they typically don't have the resources to really protect the critical infrastructure that they're responsible for. So what I really like about my organization is we're responsible for that left of boom approach, right? We're here to help organizations prepare for those bad days, and we do that by providing organizations resources at no cost to help protect those critical infrastructures.
So I guess what I would add is when you're talking about rural innovation, you're having to first start with what is the state of the tech infrastructure in the rural community, that there's still a lot of communities that don't have access to reliable internet, or they have really significant limitations on whether they can upload or download or stream. I know even during the pandemic, there were a lot of folks that couldn't do Zoom calls or video calls from their home because it wasn't strong enough to handle that. And so I think one of the first things that we're having to look at in supporting the entrepreneurial aspect of that conversation is really figuring out, where does your community land on that scale? What do you have access to in your home? I know so when I first started one of my companies, I was in a very rural community and we were still on satellite internet. And so there were many days when I would have to go to McDonald's to finish my calls, right? That if you're scrappy enough and you really want it badly enough, you can find a solution, right? But it's also really figuring out what kind of limitations you are going to have with that business. What are things that you can rely on? And then as a region, how you're able to offer spaces that are, safe, reliable spaces that the community can go to if they do have challenges with that. But then the other side of that is what kind of tech skill limitations you also have. And so when the communities are when you're building an ecosystem that's around tech startups or tech businesses, of not only how to use the internet, but how to leverage the different softwares and services that are out there. Whether you're looking at, getting a remote job or having a network of remote teams, or it's that you're starting a business that's completely online, really understanding how to build a tech stack that works for your business. Sometimes, we come to it and we know what we know, but we have blind spots on what that looks like. And that's definitely going to impact the scalability of your business model. And so making sure that you've got the technical support and resource advisement so that you can help the business owners that are having to look more at the nuanced conversations, and that they dive into AI, but they don't necessarily know to ask the right questions around data security, that they don't know what they don't know. And so as you're thinking about your community, I think starting with, where do you already have those resources? Like what are the challenges that your rural community is facing when it comes to tech infrastructure? And if you have like consistent pockets or types of companies that are building up, that you can let them kind of foster a community for themselves. I think that's one of the biggest challenges of being in a rural community, especially being an entrepreneur, is that the loneliness factor is real. That we all get really tired of being home, and in a rural community, your neighbors may be miles away, right? So you can get really isolated, and there is a lot of joy in having space and being in that country lifestyle. But there also is a lot of challenges that come with that. And so the reason why people gather and why they connect and how ecosystems engage has been in so much flux over the past few years between the pandemic and then AI, that I think all communities are having to figure out, why do people need us now, right? If innovation has made everything a global conversation, what is it that your local community offers anymore? And how are you building programs that are actively meeting those business owners where they are around what it is that they know that they want and need?
That's really well said, Emily. Like, +1 to everything you said. Yeah, I would echo the "you don't know what you don't know" side of founding. I think if I had tried to start from scratch from a town of 1,200 people without the foundation I had, I wouldn't know most of what I do about startups. I took, a lot of knowledge from large entrepreneurial resources from bigger metro areas to a mid-sized metro area to now I can operate. But I do see that struggle with founders who are trying to start small, like start from a small community, a small limited resource area. I mean, even in a town of 200,000 people in a university town of Columbia, Missouri, right? We still have maybe one or two resources. You don't have 10. I started my career in a town of 1.5 million. And so that had, 10 resources of every type, and you had a lot of industry expertise. And so it's really difficult to do all of that virtually. I think you can get information, but you get so much information that you don't know what's relevant to your town, your community. And that's why I'm so passionate about like how do we start in these small communities and actually reach the businesses that are there. And also the loneliness factor. I've speculated with Annette. I'm like, I'm a founder operating my company completely virtually. I assume there are other people in my town doing this. I have never met another founder who does tech in my town. I don't know where to find them. I don't know where they live. They might be working out of the McDonald's. I don't know. So it's trying to figure out like how do you build community when it is so virtual because everyone has had to be make those connections to the resources and then also just other entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge. The smaller the town you get, that's the bigger the challenge.
A couple of resources that I found particularly useful and that I've observed with others. One is local libraries can really be a wonderful resource to at least get the initial tech that you need to get rolling. So computer access, halfway decent internet, copy machine, conference room, some of those basic things. So that's a really solid place to really take those initial steps. But as far as building out a business, the next thing is who are your customers? What are they willing to pay for? What's their pain point? How can you help? Uh, and for me, working through associations turned out to be one of the great paths forward because you can ask questions in a pretty safe way when you're talking to the association staff. They know what the challenges are with the customers that you're trying to serve because their members and your customers, they overlap. And so you can have those kind of candid conversations. You can talk about your ideas. They can tell you which ideas really suck. And then you can realize, oh, but there's this tangent that actually is kind of a cool thing. And that ends up shifting and becoming your core business. So it's interesting to see how it morphs and really spending time figuring out who your customer is and then listening to them. They will tell you what your business should do, and they'll tell you how you can prosper. And then it's just a matter of filling in the resources from there to make it happen.
You were talking before about William, like, you walk out of the office, you see with someone walking down the street and say, hey, I just have been working on this. Do you want to, go grab a coffee or a beer and we'll talk about this aspect, etc. And I imagine Wendy could walk up and down the streets of Marceline all day and never run into somebody that she could potentially talk about, hey, I'm helping somebody develop out a website, or, we need someone who's got experience writing this type of code or whatever, right? You just don't have that critical mass of people. Not to say those people don't exist, but they're potentially all in their houses, all in their bedrooms, working remotely.
Well, and to be clear, we have that same issue in the cities, that people aren't gathering and working together anymore.
If you don't have a single hub, people just need that place to collaborate and connect that is consistent, that they know where to go, and that you can show up all the time. I mean, one of the resources I followed around the country is 1 Million Cups. So it was a huge thing in Charleston where I started my entrepreneurial career. It meets every Wednesday, 9 a.m. around the country, right? I started in Kansas City. It's a good Missouri story. Columbia's, that's how I found my first connection and job when I moved back there. So again, like it's a very consistent entrepreneurial ecosystem, but it is very different depending on what city you're visiting. So some chapters are really robust, some are really small, but it does exist, right? So if I'm traveling, if I'm an entrepreneur, that doesn't exist in towns under 100,000 people, really. You need a kind of a concentration of entrepreneurs and resources to have those kind of chapters. So then it's how do we get something that consistent and that welcoming for entrepreneurs everywhere. And maybe it's virtual. I think virtual does have a big power there, but then it's not that same local touch that William's talking about, where you can see your neighbor doing this, not just somebody around the country.
Robert, when you work with these businesses around the place, what do you know? Are you noticing any particular trends or concerns that especially rural people, but people that have got technology startups or companies that rely on the internet, you noticing there's always a common thread there?
Well, I think there's probably multiple, threads or trends that we can look at. A good source that I kind of rely on is the statistics from the Internet Crime Center. If you're not familiar with the Internet Crime Center, that's a function of the FBI. Typically, right now, most of the reporting self-reported, so it's up to organizations to report when they actually have an incident. But kind of going forward, we do have CECERA, which is the cybersecurity incident reporting of critical infrastructure. This is going to be a new federal law that we anticipate that will go into effect later this year, that will have a mandatory reporting element to it for organizations to report to CISA when they have an incident. And I think the timelines are 72 hours, but if it's ransomware, it may be 24. So, I've been telling all my stakeholders that, be aware that law is going to probably go into effect in the near future, and make sure that you understand if you're a covered entity or not, whether you do have to report. But based on those statistics, we know that, rural communities or rural organizations that are resource tapped are hit pretty hard. If you look at the effects of a ransomware attack, we know that a lot of the threat actors will go after those smaller organizations, typically because they don't have the resources in place to protect that critical infrastructure and monitor it 24/7 like a larger organization would. And we also noticed that based on those trends, that a lot of the smaller businesses that do suffer a cyber attack typically close their doors within 6 months of that attack. So there's interesting trends out there. And, our whole goal at CIS is to, get organizations prepared, right? And one of the main focuses that we have is, we encourage them to have a plan, right? Develop an incident response plan. What would they do if something were to occur? But we also provide them a lot of resources that, they can monitor their vulnerabilities. So one of the best services that CISA has to offer for any organization, and again, on cybersecurity services, everything is at no cost, right? And also, we don't just offer cybersecurity. We also offer physical security and emergency communications. But on the best service that we have from a cyber perspective is our weekly SciHi scan. This is a weekly scan of your internet-facing systems for vulnerabilities and risky services. So what those your external exposures are. Because if you look at threat actors, how are they getting into your networks? They're either utilizing a phishing attack against your employees in hopes that somebody's going to click on that link, or they're going to compromise a vulnerability or a weakness on an internet-facing system and gain access that way. So we can help you prepare and defend and know what your exposures are. Besides that, we also offer tabletop exercises. So these are great opportunities. So when you do develop your incident response plan, how do you exercise it? So we got a whole bunch of opportunities available on our website. I think over 115 pre-canned scenarios that you can download to conduct your tabletop exercises. We also offer remote pen tests, risk vulnerability assessments. Those are more advanced services. And we also, for the rural communities and these are for state and local entities, we also offer cybersecurity grants. So right now there's a multi-year $1 billion grant available for state and local. And this one's an interesting grant because there's a minimum percentage or pass-through of that grant money that needs to get down to what the state defines as rural communities. We also partner with the Multi-State Information Analysis Center and also the Elections Information Analysis Center. And there's a lot of additional services that CISA funds through grant money to that organization to provide additional services to state and local entities, and specifically right now elections. One of the best ones is a recent program that they stood up called Underserved Counties. So if your county is specifically rural and it can't support or fund even discounted services through the MSISAC for, let's say, EDR, the Underserved County program can pick up 100% of that tab. So it's great programs out there that we're trying to raise the awareness.
Wow, some really good resources that we potentially don't know about. So as I said at the beginning, and this is a plug for the conference, but also Robert will be at the conference presenting more details on all of these types of resources. So the things you don't know that you don't know, right? Okay, so William, all right, let's back up a little bit. And can you tell us about geofencing? Because I'm aware that I touched on this in the introduction, but we could have people on this call that have no idea what geofencing is. And I admit I didn't until embarrassingly recently.
Sure. So we're data geeks, and one of the things that we do is a lot of survey work. And one of the things that we asked ourselves from a development standpoint is, okay, surveying is something of a commodity. Certainly, surveying done well is certainly a skilled thing. It's also done unwell, very cheap, using SurveyMonkey and those kind of tools. Just because you have an X-Acto knife doesn't mean you should be doing surgery on yourself. So, there's good things and there's bad things about doing it on your own. But looking at the industry and trying to figure out, okay, what is the next thing? What's the thing that we can use to create unique value for the various communities that we serve? And we came across this crazy thing called geofencing. So what it does essentially is it tells you, for a particular area that you're interested in a particular time that you're interested in, how many people came through that space? What are their demographics? What are their psychographics? So in other words, what are their kind of personality kind of things? What other places do they go? How much time do they spend there? Have they been there a lot? Is that their first time? So it answers a lot of those kinds of really practical questions that are great from my standpoint of being in community development, because I'm trying to think about, well, where can we develop an event, a festival that attracts the kind of people that we want to attract to our city? Where are they coming from? Where do we go out on Facebook or Instagram to build interest and awareness of this? And how can we make sure that we package it in such a way that it actually appeals to them? Because I'm an old white guy, and if I'm trying to attract someone from a different demographic, it's not going to come across as very authentic. So understanding who your customer is, who's coming to the kind of thing that you're developing, is really, really useful if you want to have that authentic kind of approach that resonates with them. So your messages grip them, the pictures grab them, and they actually come and do the thing that you want them to do. So that's what geofencing is. Basically, we create an electronic little fence around the space that you're interested in. We look at the time period that you're interested in, and we say, here's all the data of the folks that came through. Now, having said that, privacy is important. I think Robert is over there cringing a little bit because he knows some of the stuff that's collected in the background. So the privacy thing is really important, and that's something that we pay a lot of attention to, our data providers pay a lot of attention to, so that the information that you receive is compliant with both European and US privacy laws, and we're not violating people's trust. So essentially, you end up getting statistics on different types of folks that come through. You don't ever get any individual information on them. You just know, 78% were female, 32% were male, various ethnicities, various, zip codes that they come from, and so on, without giving you the breakdown where it could be compromised. So that's what it is. So we use it in lots of different ways. We started a festival called the Michigan Nordic Fire Festival, which is this big Viking Ren Fair thing, kind of a dark age thing that we do at the end of February, when it's just starting to not be so bitterly cold, when those 28-degree days feel delicious, and you go out in your shorts and t-shirts. That's what we do. We have about 10,000, actually, no, we had about 20,000 of our friends from around the country come out and visit us in our little town. And that's just the power of using this kind of data to really understand where people are coming from, who are they, and then being able to then provide some information that attracts them even more. And then whether you're a community developer, whether you're a small business, whether you're an educational institution, the tool can be used by all those different groups.
That festival sounds amazing, William.
It is fun.
I think you
Yeah.
need to share an event link.
All right. I could do
Sounds like a
that.
good way to break up the end of winter.
Come drink some mead. I run the mead
Yeah.
hall.
It's just nuts.
And what a cool way to gather like a community around something fun again.
So I'm interested, Emily, because you said, yeah, it's not just in rural, so it's also in the city as well. So, do you think that this rural and the city, the challenges that tech founders have are actually more common than they may realize? And are there any differences that are just, more exclusive to one or the other?
I mean, you think the biggest challenges that rural communities face is just the lack of concentration of resources and programs and opportunities, right? Like as Wendy pointed out, that you have fewer, right? You have less diversity in what's available. You don't have, you'll be lucky if you have small business development center director who services your community, that you may have a chamber in your community. Some either a CDFI or a credit union or a local, small business lending partner. And so you're having to like connect the dots across your region. So it may not just be in your town. I think the challenges that innovators and entrepreneurs are facing right now are the same no matter where you live, that there are opportunities and there are barriers for everybody, that the pandemic completely changed the reason of why you have an ecosystem, of why people connect, that it brought everybody home. It made everyone seriously reevaluate what they're doing with their lives and their jobs and their businesses and all the things, right? And so the pandemic was kind of the first big flip, that it changed the role of the community and it made people really look seriously around what work they're doing and how they're growing their business and the relationship that they have with their work, whether it's a career or a business. But then you had AI come and kind of flip it back again, right? That ChatGPT also changed the way in which business is done, and that every small business owner, every entrepreneur, every professional has had to really look at how they can use AI in some form, that has changed the way in which business models work because it's made everything move faster. And so when you're looking at how you're supporting business development and like technology enabled business development, I think that the same barriers that we have in cities are the same barriers that we have in small towns, right? Because innovation now is a global conversation. It's what happens online, no matter where you're living. And so as long as you have access to that, you are in the game in some way, right? And so I think founders are having to figure out how much they are willing to invest in their business, as in time, resources, energy, focus, because AI also made everything faster paced. It changed a lot of the rules. It changed the way that the timeline of how what people are expecting in getting to market, in what you're able to do in your business, right? That if you use these tools correctly, it's almost as like you have a team of people that's supporting your business. And so I think it's been kind of like this existential crisis for business owners of who they are and what they're doing and how they choose to use the things that are available, which is funny because it came on the heels of the pandemic existential crisis of like, what am I doing with my life? And so I think that that's a reality for everybody. It doesn't matter where you live or what you have available, like why we start and run a business. That is a different question that we're asking as humans now. And I think even the idea of a side hustle is different because technology has made it so that everybody can have a side hustle in some way, right? And so I think what Wendy also pointed out of how there's a difference between in rural communities, kind of the homegrown talent versus the relocated talent, that folks who are coming in with a wide variety of skills and insight and background and experience are able to actually offer a lot of those things to the community versus those who are homegrown and have not had as much of a robust access to learning those things and having that kind of exposure. And so really making sure that you're building the network that's allowing those folks to intermingle, because there's a lot of value on both sides. But I think that there's actually there's more that we have in common now when we're looking through the lens of our founders and our business owners, the similarities are a lot closer because business, I feel like, is more consistent no matter where you are. The challenges that we face are the same, but it's the access points. It's that how we access resources, how we access the internet. That has a huge impact on your growth rate, obviously, right? That if you've got the skills, if you've got the partners, if you've got the funding opportunities, that you're able to grow faster and have more dynamic growth opportunities for your businesses when you do have access to that. So I think that there's a lot of layers to this, but in the end, the way that I think the human experience of business is very similar, no matter where you live right now, and that we're all kind of having the same questions as we're considering how to leverage technology and why we're building a business right now.
I would just like to add on to that. I think I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum when we deal with the AI. I think that, I think we're all going to have to face it at some point, one way or another. But I think organizations really need to look at, what are the risks associated with bringing AI into my organization. I'm kind of worried about, maybe sensitive information being posted out there, because when you're using AI, it's going to be going out to the cloud. And always, when I talk to my stakeholders, I always ask them, well, what's the meaning of cloud? What does cloud stand for? Right. And it's China loves her uploaded data. But I'm kind of concerned about that. But I'm also concerned from the standpoint is, how is AI going to be used against us? And I think we're starting to see some of the ramifications of AI, especially with nation states. If you followed in the news recently, the issue KnowBe4, if you're familiar with that organization, they hired a software engineer. They went through the interview process. It was a remote video, but they actually hired a North Korean nation state actor. And that just kind of shows you the efforts these nation states are going to get their people employed with U.S. businesses. So I'm kind of concerned about AI, but I think we before we jump in the bandwagon and drink the Kool-Aid, I think we need to take a step back and approach it a little bit cautiously to look at what are the risks associated with my organization.
Well, the one thing I would say too, Robert, is I think when we're talking about small businesses and like rural entrepreneurship, there's a lot of different layers to how you use AI when it's more around like AI for productivity and like task management and task efficiency, and less around data management. I think that there's a lot of ways in which AI can be leveraged for a small business where it makes it seem like they have staff and that they're able to minimize, but that they're not actually deploying a lot of data into a system.
And absolutely. And that's why I'm saying, businesses should look at it from a risk approach, right? To say, okay, what information am I going to be utilizing AI with?
And I think as communities are really looking at how they're actively supporting their business network, getting a sense of like at what point the businesses in your community cross that threshold where it's less around efficiency and more around exposure, right? That they're actually, they have data management systems that they may not getting the technical advice around how to protect themselves. And I think from an ecosystem standpoint, we have to figure out who those are and are we giving them the support that they need to make those decisions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would echo both of you on that. The education piece around data privacy is so necessary in every new tool. So AI is the big name of the game right now, but this is true about every single new technology tool that comes out. I mean, even down to using Zoom, right? Like a lot of people had concerns about using video conferencing. A lot of people have concerns about remote workers, and are they pulling double shifts? Are they accurately representing their experience? There's a lot of, I think, concern that happens with every new wave of change. And with each one of those, it's accurate information, right? So to both your points, with AI, it's how do I leverage it in a way that makes sense for my business, where I'm optimizing my performance, but I'm not threatening my business and taking on more risks than I should. And that's true about that. That was cool about cloud servers. There's so much that every time we have this new iteration of tech, we always have to get the right, accurate information. And I think that's the piece that's the hardest to do from an ecosystem perspective is entrepreneurs are getting information from every which way. You can Google your way to every answer you ever want to get. So I'm either going to get that information inaccurately, or I'm going to get it from a trusted resource that's vetted by the state, by my city, and it's somebody who knows what they're talking about. I do, however, often get a lot of resistance against adopting new tech from a lot of very traditional organizations as well. And I'm probably somewhere in between, right? Like a little bit skeptical of every new thing, but you have to leverage new tech to survive in this. So I think it's somewhere in between, not having so much risk aversion that you don't use it in a way that it's intended. But to your point, Robert, not automatically adopting a lot of things that would put your company at risk. I think the state resources are really helpful to fill in the gaps there when you don't have it on a local level.
As a small business in a rural community and starting out, in some ways, I think of it as being in my bat cave, and I'm an introvert, so that's great. I love my bat cave, but there's certain things that the bat cave needs to have. So you need to have the good information coming in. You know what's going on. You've got to have the ability to project information out, and so understanding what tools the community can provide, or at least make people aware of, can be very useful. So for me, something like Starlink, because our internet sucks out here, and actually having a halfway decent connection, as long as you don't have trees. It is really useful, and it's reasonably affordable. It's not free, but it's halfway decent. And that's a useful thing. Now, I have an advantage that I came from the financial industry, and there were a bunch of guys in IT drinking their Mountain Dews and chomping on their Funyuns, coming up with evil ways of fooling us to click on a link internally. And so after, 30 years of dealing with that, I've gotten to be I really appreciate a good cyber attack. You look at it and say, wow, that's really well done. But that's something that is unusual for someone who's been in the financial industry for a while to be aware of kind of the tells of something like that going on. So having that, maybe not quite as obnoxious, but having a more robust education in the schools, and also available through the chamber and through the library and that kind of thing, just to build awareness of, hey, people are really clever and they're coming up with all kinds of great ways of screwing you over. Come visit us for the latest things that are going on and how to spot them. That would be a useful tool at the small rural level. Because, as a small startup, you don't have an IT staff. You're too busy just trying to figure out where your next project is coming from to really spend much time on doing those kind of things, even though you should. It doesn't actually happen. And so equipping some of these support services in these small communities that can build awareness that, hey, this stuff is going on, and also let's savvy up a little bit, maybe sign up for this spamathon where we're going to just try to really screw you over and then show you where you've gone wrong. That can be a valuable tool. One of my favorites as an entrepreneur is when you get that email coming back saying, congratulations, you've been selected, your proposal can move forward, click here for details. And it's a spam, or not spam, but it's a trap to click into it. But most people would say, finally, I can feed my family. Let me click on this and see what's going on. And bad things then result.
Well, one thing that I was going to say, Annette, is that I think kind of piggybacking off of what we talked about earlier, of like how city entrepreneurs are having the same challenges as rural entrepreneurs. Like, I think that one of our biggest challenges just as humans is that during the pandemic, we all went home and we realized that we didn't like being around other humans as much as we thought that we did. And like, we all kind of like became really awkward at networking. We all suck at networking now. We realized that running the rat race is optional and we don't have to kill ourselves for our work. And so like re-engaging isn't happening. For the most part, we don't want to be around each other as much as we did before, right? And so part of it is that tech is fun. That like getting people to come out of their homes or their office and coming back out and engaging. Like, we're also, what every ecosystem, what every community needs is people who want to build community again, right? We're having to entice people to re-engage. And that's really hard because for the most part, we learn to love our lives away from each other. And leaning on kind of the shiny, fun, exciting novelty of cool things that are happening in the world where you've got that hook that they open the email, that they come to your thing. Like for the most part, like most business classes are the same stuff that we've always heard, right? Like it talks about a business plan or getting a loan, or I mean, even marketing nowadays, like it's stuff that we know. That you're really having to lean into what's worth not putting on your pajamas. Like what's worth staying out an extra hour? What's exciting enough or enticing enough or that people are curious about enough that they choose to stay out and come to your thing. And so I think that's one of our biggest challenges as communities is we have to put together stuff that people care about and that gets them intrigued. And tech and innovation is one of those things that's really sexy and that people, it's presenting opportunities that people may not know a lot about. And your challenge is always to figure out where's the cool factor, right? I mean, not everybody can bring mead to the event, William, which I vote that you bring it to the event in September because I would love to try it. But whatever you can get, man, that draws them out, right? Or make things Viking themed or whatever yours was, Nordic themed. You just got to get creative and you got to play with what you got. And it's also not just the cool factor. It's also the fear factor, right? Like the cybersecurity stuff, the data protection stuff. People come because they know they're at risk, right? And so you're having to figure out what's going to make them choose to do this over something else. Because I think that's our biggest challenge as organizers, as event builders, is that people don't want to come to our stuff anymore. And that's real. I have to fight that every single day with our network.
Yeah, you're so right, Emily. And this is, I just glanced at the time. It's 2:25. Who would have ever thought that, man, this flew by, you guys. It flew by. And yes, you are absolutely, I resonate because, the conference this year, we have worked so hard to publicize and market the conference. One of the beautiful things that I like about the CEC conference and why I choose to be involved with it is that the sessions take place in the stores. So you're not going to a conference where you're going to sit inside a hotel boardroom and look at four walls the whole time. You're actually sitting in a boutique or a very cool restaurant or a cafe or a florist or a bed and breakfast. And you're experiencing the town. You're experiencing a rural town. You get to do shopping. So, learning, shopping, eating, great food. It's about the experience. And I have a background in theater, so I'm all about like what is the actual experience for people, right, while they're there. So again, and gosh, I'm shamelessly plugging this conference, but I'd be no good at marketing if I wasn't. So yes, I see in the chat, one of the best. Thank you. Yes, this has been such a fantastic and interesting panel, and you're right, tech is fun and cool and interesting and exciting, and even the protection stuff and stuff. So yes, final takeaways. We have 4 minutes. So if you want to, we'll go around and what's your takeaway from today, Robert?
Well, I thought it was a great conversation. So I look forward to presenting, I think, on the 19th in Fulton, and hope to see you there.
So I'm excited to meet more folks across the state. I'm still somewhat new to St. Louis. And I don't get out much because I work too hard. So it's entrepreneurial conferences are the best because it's like our version of like band camp, right? So I can't wait. Yeah.
For me, I do come out of the bat cave for these kind of things. So it's a lot of fun just to hear the stories of how people started with their idea and then realized it was a crappy idea, but there was this other weird little corner of it that was the brilliant idea. And that's the thing that blossomed and became just this wonderful business. Those are wonderful stories, stories of how people overcame challenges, like getting people to attend events, and how they broke through that particular glass ceiling to actually make it happen. Often it's, you hook it onto something that they're already passionate about, whether it's dressing up silly or zombies or burning things down, drinking meat, whatever. There's a lot of ideas that people are just naturally interested in. And if you can grab those and run with it, then you can really gain a lot of ground. So I'm looking forward to it.
Love it. Well, I'm so excited for this conference and to see everybody in real life. I don't say Batcave. I say I come out of my hobbit hole because live out in the middle of nowhere on a hill. And so, and same, it takes a lot to want to engage with people in real life, put on the pants and come out of the remote work. But I think these kind of conversations are what makes it exciting. I think tech is it's fun, it's innovative. It can also be scary, and you have to use it responsibly. And so I think that all of these conversations are really necessary to make a really strong state and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so excited to see everybody. A few weeks.
Well, yes, me too, me too. So thank you to all our panelists. We know you are all very busy people, so thank you for giving up your time to be on our panel today. I'm off to the dog park to take my dogs, my 3 dogs, for a run. And maybe after Emily's speech just now, maybe I won't wear my headphones, and maybe I will actually try and engage with some other, what us dog people are all a little bit quirky, right? And I won't be wearing my pajamas. But Emily, hey, I'll give you bonus points if you turn up at the conference in pajama pants.
I've worn worse.
We support you.
I work in tech. I get to wear literally whatever I want. No one cares.
Yes.
There's no rules.
Yeah.
That's why we do this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And we'll all be like, oh, that's what the cool people are doing.
That's the cool factor, man. No one guesses. They're just thrilled to be there.